All right, class, so hopefully we have some grasp of the life of Socrates. So let's talk about the teachings of Socrates. So in this presentation, we're going to learn about 5 major Socratic teachings: the Socratic Method, Know Thyself, Care for the Soul, Socratic Ignorance, and Virtue is Wisdom. And then we'll end with some conclusions. So unlike his contemporaries, the Sophists, who taught their students rhetorical and argumentative techniques, Socrates employed a dialectical method of question and answer with his pupils, which has become immortalized as the Socratic Method. And the Socratic Method is based upon the idea that the purpose of education is not to fill the minds of students by teaching them. Rather, it is to draw wisdom out of them by questioning them. That is, in Plato's dialogues, Socrates famously referred to himself as a midwife of wisdom. That is, he himself does not give birth to wisdom. Rather, he helps others to give birth to wisdom. Hence, if you read Plato's dialogues, Socrates examines friends, pupils, and strangers by actively questioning them, asking them fundamental moral questions like, what is courage? What is love? What is beauty? What is goodness? And what is holiness? And for Socrates, the answers to these questions already exist in the psyche, or the soul or mind. So one only needs to be asked the right questions for the answers to surface to the conscious mind. So again, like a midwife, Socrates is not giving birth himself to wisdom, but he is drawing out wisdom out of the psyche, just as a midwife would draw a baby or a child out of a woman. So we will learn more about the nature of this psyche and this pre-existent knowledge when we get to the Plato unit. All right, so let's talk about the Socratic teaching of know thyself. So whereas the early Greek philosophers were interested in the nature of reality, Socrates was interested in the nature of the self. So Socrates encouraged what we might call active self-analysis. And to employ Socratic self-analysis, one must ask themselves crucial existential questions. Why do I believe what I believe? What is the nature of my moral values? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning and purpose of death? Now, because Socrates broke with the early Greek fascination with the cosmos, appealing instead to an examination of human nature and moral values, Socrates is known as the father of ethics. So as the father of ethics, Socrates asks, again, these big questions regarding moral values and the meaning of life. So speaking of big human questions, what is the purpose of life according to Socrates? So for Socrates, the purpose of life is to care for the soul. But what does this mean? Well, to care for the soul or psyche means to purify the soul of ignorance. So for Socrates, when we are born, the psyche or the soul is pure, as it contains true or pure knowledge. But as we live our lives, the psyche becomes defiled by untrue knowledge. So the psyche, which is like a piece of glass, becomes like encrusted with dirt, with this kind of untrue or false knowledge. So it is only through philosophical dialogue, that is the Socratic method, and earnest self-analysis, that moral truths come to light, which purifies the soul of ignorant beliefs. So it is through the Socratic method that knowledge comes out of the soul and makes one enlightened and cleanses the mind or the soul of ignorance. Now, this is very important. Care for the soul is something that all human beings are called to do for Socrates. And to neglect caring for the soul is an immoral life. For as Socrates argues, evil is ignorance. Hence, Socrates refers to himself as a physician of the soul, or one who helps others to heal their soul of ignorance. So speaking of ignorance, let's talk about this kind of ironic or paradoxical concept of Socratic ignorance. So it can be argued that the first step in the pursuit of spiritual care is to declare what is called Socratic ignorance. And Socratic ignorance means for someone to admit that they know nothing. This is because for Socrates, the truly wise are those who demonstrate humility, for it is the humble who realize their ignorance and thus must embark on the journey for wisdom. So, what is wisdom anyway? So for Socrates, wisdom is virtue and virtue is wisdom. Oy, all right, what does this mean? Well, to be virtuous means that you excel at a profession, art, or craft. In other words, virtue assumes that you put your knowledge into action. Therefore, for Socrates, the truly wise are those who put their moral knowledge into action. So the Socratic philosopher is one who not only engages in rigorous self-analysis and moral philosophizing, but is also an individual who puts newly discovered moral values into action. So in conclusion, the major Socratic teachings to be aware of in this class are the following. So know what the Socratic method is, this kind of unique approach to philosophy of question and answer. Be aware of the Socratic concept of know thyself. That is, that the purpose of a philosopher is to engage in rigorous self-analysis. Also, know about the Socratic concept of caring for the soul, of this mission or the purpose in life being to purge the soul of ignorance. Also know this kind of paradoxical idea of Socratic ignorance, that the first step in the journey of caring for the soul is to admit that you know nothing. And also be mindful of this statement, virtue as wisdom. That is, the job of a philosopher is not just to think, but is also to act.